What's good guys, Adam Lewis here, back with another mix walkthrough video. Today we're looking at a track called Opposites Attract by an artist who goes by the name of Tray Avlon.
When you stroke my soul through the shivers for 8 nights, daylight to daylight, and when you watershed we stay live. They say that opposites attract, I'm real, I ain't trying to find the opposite of that. Came in my life, you're my queen, it's a fact, show my lyrics to my beat, indeed that's a rap.
If you like what you hear from this artist, please do take time to check out his social media and his music, and I'll leave all those links in the description below. So before we dive into this mix, I wanted to first just show you a before. So this is before I did anything to the song, completely raw. I've got the beat stems here, drums at the top, bass, and then all the instruments. And then I've got the chorus vocals and the verse vocals. So this is before any mixing, any editing, any chopping. I have put a limiter on the end of this just to bring up the level a little bit so it's loud enough for you to hear. But apart from that, everything else is completely raw. So take a listen to this and I'll tell you what jumped out at me and what direction I decided to go in with this mix. And then we'll hop over to what I actually did.
I saw the devil at 17. Hallelujah. Broke your heart, now you're looking at me. You ain't seen melanin. That's my skin tone. It's all about the action when I pull up, no I see. Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. I'm confessing all my sins.
So that's half of the first verse. I'm gonna play you the chorus now as well.
And when you watershed, we stay live. They say that opposites attract, I'm real, I ain't trying to find the opposite of that. Came in my life, you're my queen, it's a fact, show my lyrics to my beat, indeed that's a rap. They say that opposites attract, I'm real, I ain't trying to find the opposite of that. Came in my life, you're my queen, it's a fact, show my lyrics to my beat, indeed that's it's probably the lowest I ever felt. True, you see me smile, you can never tell. A+ at land.
So what I particularly liked about this song and why I wanted to show it is it's kind of a mix of things going on here. So you've got the kind of hard hitting rap nature of it. The vocals are delivered in a very kind of hard hitting way. But then at the same time, you've got the emotion going on in the beat, particularly with these vocals here. So some really nice elements. And it's also got the kind of love song element to it as well. So I'm going to switch over now to the fully mixed song and play you a little bit of that. So here we have the fully mixed song. And before I go into what I did and what I treated, I just want to show you how this sounds. So I'm going to play half of the first verse and then part of the chorus as well and see what you think.
I saw the devil at 17. Hallelujah. Broke your heart, now you're looking at me. You ain't seen melanin. That's my skin tone. It's all about the action when I pull up, no I see. Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat.
So there's part of the verse and I'm going to go into the chorus now.
The shivers for 8 nights, daylight to daylight, and when you watershed we stay live. They say that opposites attract, I'm real, I ain't trying to find the opposite of that. Came in my life, you're my queen, it's a fact, show my lyrics to my beat, indeed that's a rap. They say that opposites attract, I'm real, I ain't trying to find the opposite of that. Came in my life, you're my queen, it's a fact, show my lyrics to my beat, indeed that's it's probably the lowest I ever felt.
So, as you can hear, hopefully that sounds quite a bit different and quite a bit more polished than the previous raw version that I showed you. So I'm going to quickly walk you through the kind of structuring of the project here. As you can see, I've got a drum stack here. So this is like a summing stack with all the drums within it. And I've got one for the bass, and then I've got one for all the instruments. And there's a lot of different synths and pianos going on in here, as well as those vocals that I showed you. And then down here, we've got the chorus vocals. Pretty simple layout here for the vocals. We've got chorus vocals all within this. We've got this kind of singing ad-lib going on here on the chorus as well. And then we've got the verse vocals. And within that, we've got a main, we've got a BV, we've got a couple of delays. And then below that, we've got ad-libs for the verses. And we've also got an outro here as well, which we may not get to because I really want to focus on the main things within this song. So the first thing when I hear a song like this is to try and identify what the important parts of the song are. What's the best way of getting the emotion and the feeling of the song across to the listener? Obviously, with a hip-hop song, it's always going to be about the drums and the bass. That's the first and foremost thing that you're going to think about. How can I get the drums and bass to come through strong as possible? Obviously, without drowning out everything else, but you want to get the kick and the bass sounding right. So I will talk about how I did that. The other thing is what I mentioned in the when I played you the raw, which is to do with the emotion of these vocal tracks here, these vocal samples in the beat. So I really wanted to make sure that they come out well in the song. And then obviously the vocals, making them clear, punchy, strong, but also to have the right effects going on to create the right feel and vibe around them as well. So we'll start with the drums here. I didn't do a massive amount, but I'll show you quickly how I tried to make these kick as much as possible. So we're going to solo these and just play you it from around here. So on the kick itself, I haven't done a whole lot. All I've done here is boosted around 1K. This is an important frequency in a kick if you want it to really come through in the mid-range. Obviously, we think of the kick to be sort of around this region here, sort of 100 down. But in reality, with a kick like this, where there is some detail going on up and around here, it just made the kick a little bit more present to add some mid-range here. And, that's a cool thing to do. Sometimes you think to make a kick louder, you want to boost down here. But as I say, if there is information going on up here on the sort of clicky side of the kick drum, then that can always help to make it more present. Now on the snares here, all I've done is boosted some high end using the Fresh Air plugin. Let me have a look in here. Yeah, I've also put a bit of saturation on there as well with this Shep's Omni-Channel plugin, which I really like. I've actually used this plugin as sort of like a channel strip on everything on this mix, so we'll get to that. By the way, links for all the Waves plugins that I use in this project will be in the description below. So if you're interested in purchasing any of the Waves plugins that I show you throughout this mix, they're all linked in the description below, and they're very reasonably priced as well. That's what I like about Waves. So we move on now to the hats, and I've not done a whole lot on these, so we'll skip ahead to this hat here, which I did do something. So it's kind of like a lot of kind of rolls going on here, a lot of fast hats. So I used the tremolo plugin to bring some stereo panning basically to this. So it kind of ping pongs back and forth through the speakers. So I'll play you without and with. This is a cool trick just to kind of create some more width in the drums, and I always like to do it. I think it's just a little bit of ear candy, make things pop between the speakers. You will probably want to mess around with this rate, because depending on the speed of the hats and how quick you want it to switch between speakers, you'll want to play around with this. But for this rate worked, 1/16 D. We've got more hats here, which all I've done is just some, a little bit of panning. Again, just to create some width. And that's really it for the drums. I have also sent all of these out to a reverb bus, which is just a basic short reverb bus, just to add a little bit of kind of atmosphere and ambience to the drums. I'll exaggerate that just so you can hear it. Yeah, so it just adds a little bit of space and, as I say, it's a little bit of ambience. Now, as you can see, all of these drums are contained within this drum stack. It's like a summon stack. And that allows you to not only have independent control over the drums as a whole, so I can turn the drums up, I can turn the instruments up and down, you know, I can change the levels of the overall drums, but it also allows you to put plugins or sends or anything on the overall drums. And I've done that here with the MoTT by Slate. I've used this preset here, bus driver, in the drums category on the presets, and I really like this preset when you're putting it on an overall drum bus. It's only at 23%, but I'll show you what that's doing. So I just find it adds a little bit more punch and just a little bit more clarity as well. Some nice top end in there, a little bit of punch and click, and I really like to use that. So we'll move on now to the bass down here. And again, you know, with a hip hop song, the kick and the bass is going to be really important for you to get right, balanced and playing well. Now, I was fortunate with this beat that it was produced well. The sounds were picked well, so there wasn't too much of an issue getting these to sound good together. So the first thing I've done is I've pulled up a little bit of mid-range EQ here, similar like I did on the kick. I just wanted to bring out a little bit more of that growl and that distortion. Yeah, so it's quite subtle, but it's doing a job. And then I'm using this track spacer plugin by Waves Factory, and I'm sidechaining the kick into this. So this is basically a sidechain compression. Every time the kick hits, it's going to duck down the bass. It's going to turn the bass down just momentarily while the kick is hitting. And this just allows both of them to kind of live in the same space. So I'll try and, if you watch the graphic on here, this should demonstrate this to you. So as you can see, every time the kick hits, it's actually ducking on the bass, but only down here. So I've used this high cut filter here so that when the kick hits, it's only turning down the low end on the bass. And that's important because that's the area that you're going to be fighting for space and headroom. So all the energy can be taken up when a kick and a bass is hitting at the same time down here in the sort of sub 200, sub 150 range down here. So I'm only bothering to cut off below sort of 130 down here when the kick hits. And this shouldn't really be audible. I don't want to hear the bass ducking in that area. All I'm trying to do is create more headroom so that there's not too much distortion going on when I then hit my limiters and my mastering chain at the end. So that's just about gaining a couple of dB of headroom so that I can boost my limiters and my compressors at the end. I hope that makes sense. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about that. So we'll move on now to the instruments, and I don't want to focus on individual instruments too much on this because they all sounded pretty good the way they came. I'll play you them all together on their own so you can get a feel for that. So as you can hear, there's a few synths there and there's a couple of pianos as well, creating a really nice feel. But the main thing that I wanted to show you is what I did with the vocals here, just to kind of create more of that feel and that emotion that they are providing. So what I did was used automation basically, as well as some stereo spreading. I put some stereo widening on in particular this high vocal here. But the main thing was to amplify and to kind of accentuate the nice parts of these vocals by using automation to just turn them up at particular parts of the song. So these parts of the song fall on the chorus, as you can see here. These are the chorus vocals. So these parts line up with them. And it just creates a nicer feel when the chorus hits. Yeah, so definitely don't be afraid to use automation to create movement in a mix and dynamic changes. You know, this is basically just sort of bringing those ending parts to a bit of a crescendo. And the effect is quite subtle, but it's these kind of small things which can sometimes turn a good mix into an even better mix if you use tools at your disposal like automation, you know, just to create a little bit more dynamic change and movement in a mix. So let me play you the beat as a whole now, the way that it was sounding once I fully mixed it. I usually do start with a beat mix as well, and I do it in this order, so I'll always start with drums, get those sounding nice, bring in the bass, and then I'll bring in the instruments. But obviously after that you do then have to adjust once everything's together. You know, I don't recommend doing everything as solo, but you know, I do tend to go through in that order, get everything sounding nice, and then I'll go back and adjust things. And then obviously once I've done the vocals, I'll be going back and adjusting things in the beat as well to go with the vocals. So let me play the beat all on its own here. The other thing to mention is you'll see here I've done quite a few beat chops. This is a really important part of my process. It doesn't really fall under mixing so much, but these days, you know, the lines are pretty blurred between mixing and a little bit of production and editing and structuring and things like that. So you'll see here there's a number of things that I've sort of moved around, chops, changes, and you know, with a beat like this has come from the producer, and then the artist has made the song on the beat, but the producer's not had a chance to restructure the beat around the song that's been made upon it, if you follow what I'm saying. So, you know, I've took that upon myself then as the mixer to kind of tailor the beat and the structure and the chops and things around the vocals, just to make the song sound more like a well thought out kind of project. Because the reality is, you know, producers make beats, they sell them, artists buy them, they make a song, and like I say, there's not kind of, a lot of the time, unfortunately, there isn't that kind of in-studio process of going back and forth, you know, the producer tailoring the beat around the structure of the song. But that's fine, because that can be done at any step of the process, really, and I do enjoy doing those parts. So you hear here where I've made a lot of beat chops, for example. Let me play this with the vocals.
It's probably the lowest I ever felt. Sure you see me smile, you can never tell. A plus at land, car I never fell. I never fell in love, car I never fell. Till my time with that land, yeah, I wrote it well. Funny how you know me, you don't know yourself.
So you hear how the gaps in his vocals where he's said a line and then stopped. I've also cut out the percussion and the snares and things like that at those moments just to create, I don't know, it just goes with the vocals, you know, it's trying to match the beat to what the song is doing. And then I've also made some cuts here in the instruments as well on that last line.
Well, funny how you know me, you don't know.
And it just kind of creates that break and then that drop. When all the drums and everything drops back in, you really hear the effect of that.
Fell till my time with that land, yeah, I wrote it well. Funny how you know me, you don't know yourself. I overestimated, now I'm over.
You know, it's all about creating energy, creating moments in the song that keep the listener entertained, keep the listener hooked and interested in what's going on. So we'll dive into the vocals now. And the first thing to say is that you can clearly see there's a lot of chops and things going on here with the vocals that may look a little bit messy, but I'll assure you it's not a mess. It's all well thought out. I'm actually going to do a video using this song, demonstrating exactly what I've done here in terms of the editing of the vocals and the things that we do before we start mixing, because you know, my previous videos I've only really shown you the mixing, but there's a big process before the mixing even really gets started, which is editing and preparing all of the stems and all of the files ready to be mixed. If you see here on the chorus here, there's a lot of chops in terms of getting the timing right, and you'll see the fades, you know, everything faded, everything debreathed. So this is a really important step that I think maybe people miss when they're mixing, and I'm going to do a full video showing using this verse or that verse as an example of how we edit vocals before we get going. So we'll start here with the first verse, and I'll quickly just play you how it sounds so you can get a feel for it, and then we'll dive into what I did.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fips. Sign on full rap. That's why it's awkward on day night, late night. Aeroplane mode, gal, say flat. I don't really love you, I just love that you take time. When you stroke my soul, feel the shivers for 8 nights. Daylight to daylight, and when you watershed, we stay loud. They say that opposites attract.
So it's a very strong vocal performance, very powerful. And for me, it's just about keeping all of that energy in there. I'm not trying to reduce that. When I start compressing and EQing and things, I really don't want to take away from the performance. So it's not super wet, it's not super processed, but I'll show you what I did to try and, you know, my attempt of trying to keep the energy right in this verse. The first thing in the chain here is the RX Mouth Declick by Isotope, and I've shown you this in previous videos. I use this just to kind of take out any little clicks and pops out of the raw recording, which you can often get. So I'll play you quickly without this and with it, but you may not be able to hear the subtle changes that it's making.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know.
So as you can see, it says 10 clicks repaired there. So not really enough to warrant having it on. And you know, this is really optional. I just like to use this just to kind of give me a little cleaning up of the vocals before I get started. Next in the chain is the FabFilter Pro Q. And we're using this to do a high pass filter on the vocal. I don't know if you heard there, but there was a couple of pops on the vocal where we really needed to edit that out. So let me quickly play that with and without.
Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fips. Sign on full rap. That's why it's awkward on date night, late night.
So this is the kind of subtractive EQ that I'm using on this vocal to try and just clean it up a little bit. It does take away some of the body of the vocal, some of the nice low end of the vocal a little bit, but as you'll see, I'll bring that back later on with a different EQ. But I'm taking up here, filtering out up to about 80 hertz down there just to take out the pops and the rumble. And then I'm also dipping a little bit here, only 1 dB, 1.5 dB, around 200, which is always a place of kind of annoyance in a vocal. You don't want too much of this low end mud going on down here. And then I'm also dipping a little bit here where it's probably a little bit sibilant. And then I've got a nice sort of rising shelf up here to kind of bring out some nice air in the vocal. After that, we're using the Waves de-esser, which is still one of my favorite de-essers. And this will be the first de-esser out of, there's 2 de-essers in total on this track, but this is the first one. And you'll hear that this is doing quite a bit for the sound.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fibs. Sign don't feel right.
So it's not doing a huge amount, but it's doing just enough to kind of take that initial sibilance away, because it is quite a sibilant vocal, this. Next in the chain, we've got the Sheps Omni channel. And I'm using this as a kind of channel strip. I'm using 3 processors from this, the preamp section, the EQ section, and the compressor section. It's a really nice plugin because you can move these things around. You can have them on or off. You can use what you like. Sometimes I use the de-esser on here as well. I don't really use the gate, but you can use all or 1 or 2 of these things, you know, and move them around as you please. So I've started here adding a little bit of saturation. And then I've boosted some high end here above 7K just to give it some nice high end sheen and some air on there. And then I'm using the compressor with a 4:1 ratio. Quite a fast attack and a really fast release. So let me show you what that's doing. This is gonna bring the level up of the vocal a lot with that initial compression.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess.
So it's given us a lot more level and a lot more kind of power through that compression. I did notice though that there's still a lot of sibilance on the vocal, especially now that compression's been added. That's really brought up the sibilance, so we're going to address that later on. After that, on the actual bus here, so that's all I used on the actual channel itself, and then we're outputting here to the overall verse bus or summing track, and on there we've got the virtual mix rack by Slate. We're doing some EQ on there with the FGN. We're doing some compression with the FG116, and then we're doing a little bit of kind of extra EQ here with the Revival. So let me take those 2 off. So all you're hearing here is the FGN EQ.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fibs. Sign don't feel right. That's why it's awkward on date night, late night.
So as you can hear, that's really adding some nice sizzle here with this high end and this little touch of mid-range here. I really like what this EQ sounds like. Also boosting a little bit here in the sort of low mids, but it's barely audible. And then we're using another compressor here.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid.
That's just adding a little bit more control on the vocal, just bringing it in line a little bit. And then the Revival.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fibs.
So as you can hear, all of these things are quite subtle, but overall they do make a difference. So that thickness is really adding some nice low-end warmth to the vocal, and then a little bit more sizzle and shimmer with the shimmer knob here. So let me play you without all of these on and with all of them on.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fibs. Sign don't feel right.
So I think that's sounding nicer overall, but there is a lot of sibilance going on here. It's a very sibilant vocal, especially now that we've boosted that high end. You'll see here that I've used this first de-esser just before the first compression. So very early in the chain. All I've done is a little bit of corrective EQ, then I've gone into the first de-esser, then I've gone into the two compressors. Then after that, I'm using another de-esser to kind of do the final taming of the vocal. And that's the way I like to work. There's no rigid set way of doing this, or no like particular order that you should be trying to do this in. That's just the way I like to do it. So for this de-esser, we're using the E2, and this comes in the slate package. So you hear now that this is really taming those S's.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fibs. Sign don't feel right. That's why it's awkward on date night, late night, aeroplane mode.
Now, that sounds like a little bit too much, but you'll see how the other things that I've done then after that have really brought that back out. So after that, we've got the Pro MB by Fab Filter. And as you can see, I'm boosting here in the sort of high mids and the high end.
Every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fibs. Sign don't feel right. That's why it's awkward on date night, late night, aeroplane mode, gal, say flat.
So that's just the final kind of icing on the cake. Using a little bit of compression here on the low end, and then boosting in the highs and the mids, but then also using compression so that when they go over a certain threshold, it pulls it back down.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat.
Now, I do just want to mention before we go any further that there is another level of processing going on this vocal. So as you can see, this is the verse main and the verse BV vocal. These both go out to bus 12, which is this verse summing track here. So all of these tracks are contained within this sum. But then this sum, as well as all the other vocal sums, go out to bus 20, which is my all Vox sum. So I've got an overall vocal sum, and that is down here. And I've also got processing on this. So this having this overall vocal sum allows me to turn up and down the level of all the vocals together, or solo them, or mute them. So it gives you that extra layer of control, but it also allows you to put overall processing on the vocal. So say, for example, the artist comes back to me and says, I want all the vocals turned up 1 dB or down 1 dB, which happens, then I can simply just turn that up or down 1 dB. I don't have to go through and turn all the vocals up individually. Or if the artist comes back and says, I just want more overall presence on the vocals, I can just pull up an EQ on here, add some presence, add whatever to the end of this. Or even if they say, I just want a little bit more de-essing overall, I can add a de-esser to this overall track, and I won't have to go through and do it to each individual thing. Now, I'm not saying I'm trying to be lazy by having that. I'm just saying it allows me to have that extra overall level of control over all my vocals at once. And it makes, I do a lot of back and forth with artists and producers that want changes, and this just allows an extra level of control. So I hope that's not too confusing in terms of the routing and how I've done it. Please let me know if you want me to do a video on that specifically, and I'll try and do that. But basically, this vocal goes to this bus, which is my verse bus, and then that bus, as well as all my other vocal buses, go out to the all vocals bus, which is kind of like a summing track for all the vocals. And I'm going to show you what I did on there, because it is important to the overall sound of the vocal.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid.
So I've used the Sound Toys decapitator here just to add a little bit of bite and a little bit of mild distortion on the overall vocals.
And every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat.
After that, I've used Isotope Neutron Exciter. I really like this plugin just to bring out some extra bite in the high end and in the mids.
And every night my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid.
As you can see, it's kind of adding a lot of high-end sheen and sizzle because I've used the distortion here. And this is the setting I like to use. I like to be over towards the tape. I like to drive it, but then use the blend on quite low. So you're creating the distortion and then you're only blending it in by 20 or 30%. And that's the way I like to do it. And then after that, we've got the Slate virtual tape machine, which is just kind of adding that sort of analog feel at the end of everything.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid.
So that's really doing a few things. I really feel like a low end, a sort of low mid bump going on when that comes in that I like. It sort of this gives it this warmth. So it's doing a whole lot, but I like to have this on the end of all my vocals. So I'm going to switch to the second verse now to show you the effects, because obviously this vocal's sounding good, but it's very dry. So I'm going to show you the three things that I've got on this that are creating the kind of the atmosphere and the ambience and the space around this vocal. First thing is a slap delay.
I never fell in love, car I never fell. Till my time with that line, yeah, I wrote it well. Funny how you know me, you don't know yourself. I overestimated, now I'm overwhelmed. The fire in my soul, now I'm over.
A slap delay is one of my favorite things to put on a rap vocal. I use it on most of the rap vocals that I record, that I mix, but at different levels, you know, some tracks call for a really loud slap and a really kind of mid-rangey, in-your-face slap, and some more subtle. This one was kind of in between. I'll show you what it consists of. It's basically the repeater plugin by Slate with the CLA-ish tape slap preset, but then I've also tuned this to my taste. So I've put a low pass filter so there's not too much high end coming through the slap, and then I've put a high pass filter as well, which is filtering out the sort of low end rumble. I don't want any of that going on in the delay. This is also a stereo. I've made this stereo by reducing the timing on the right channel compared to the left channel, so they're being triggered at slightly different timings in each speaker to create that kind of width.
I never fell in love, car I never fell. Till my time with that line, yeah, I wrote it well.
After that, I've got another delay, which is a quarter note delay. For that, I'm EQing into it to cut out the high end and the super low end. Then I've got the Logic Echo plugin just on quarter note with the feedback at 35.
Funny how you know me, you don't know yourself. I overestimated, now I'm overwhelmed. The fire in my soul, now I'm over self. Put my cards on the table, now I'm overdealt. How real can I get, blood a rap? Remember when you...
This is quite subtle, especially when the song's playing, because I'm actually sidechain compressing this. So I've got compressors after the echo here, and all of these have sidechained to the vocals. So I'm using the chorus to sidechain into that, the verse vocals sidechain into it. All the vocals on the song have got their own sidechain going into this delay. So I'll try and show you a visual representation of that on here when the verse is playing.
I never fell in love, car I never fell. Till my time with that line, yeah, I wrote it well. Funny how you know.
So when this part is pushing down, that's basically turning down the feedback on the delay, so that it's not interfering too much with the words when they're actually playing, and it more fills up the gaps. So you can see there's a lot of gaps on this song, and that's when the delay will really swell into those gaps.
How you know me, you don't know yourself. I overestimated, now I'm overwhelmed. The fire in my soul, now I'm over self. Put my card...
Hopefully you can hear that. Make sure you're wearing headphones or listening in a good environment so you can get that. Next, I'm using the Valhalla Room plugin on the end of that delay, just to kind of... Sometimes this delay can be a little bit too ear-catching, and I wanted it to blend in more in the background. So one way of doing that is to slap a little bit of reverb on the end of the delay, just to kind of make it blend in and become a little bit more sweet and subtle in the background rather than in your face.
I overestimated, now I'm overwhelmed. The fire in my soul, now I'm over self. Put my cards on the table, now I'm overdealt. How real can I get, blood, a rap?
So that's the quarter note delay. And then after that, we've got a reverb, quite low down in the mix, but it's still playing its part in creating an overall sound here.
I never fell in love, car I never fell. Till my time with that land, yeah, I wrote it well. Funny how you know me, you don't know yourself. I overestimated, now I'm overwhelmed. The fire in my soul, now I'm over self.
So you can see the settings I'm using here on this Verb Suite Classics plugin. Dipping down some of the high end. Got a small short pre-delay on there. I've got quite a lot of width added on here as well. That's probably a little bit more reverb than I would usually use on a rap vocal, but because this song is, you know, it's got that kind of emotion to it, I feel like having a bit more reverb on a rap vocal on a song like this, where there is emotion, where there is real feeling in the song, and it is quite a slow song with a lot of gaps and a lot of space in it. I think the reverb can help to kind of fill that out and just make the vocals sit there nicely. And after that reverb, we just got a couple of EQs here, as you can see, dipping down on some of the highs and the high mids. And then also just filtering out the super lows here, as well as around 200. You know, I don't like to have too much 200 going on in my reverb tails. They can get muddy. So yeah, that's the full vocal mix. So I'm going to play the third verse here just to mix it up a little bit with the beat to show you what it sounded like after.
Lord knows I gave my ex work. I feel growing pains every time I exert. Never find another, yeah, that's how my ex worked. Until you meet another, that is all your ex weren't. Specialize in you, I'm your expert. Like when I got you, just to make my kids surf. In your belly, think I overestimated, now I'm overwhelmed. The fire in my soul, now I'm over self. Put my cards on the table, now I'm overdealt. How real.
Quickly show you what I did here to the backing vocals. So these are basically like vocal stabs or BVs on the verse. Very, very much similar to the way that I mixed the main verse vocal. So I won't go through everything here. You can see it's pretty much the same. I sometimes like to DS the BVs a little more than I did the main verse vocal, just because I don't want the sibilants. I already have too much sibilants in the main vocal, so I don't want to have clashing sibilants going on from the BV. So sometimes to dip this even further down is a good idea. Don't look like I did that with this one, but that's fine. And the only difference really is obviously these are lower in the mix than the main vocal. And also I've used this PSP pseudo stereo plugin to create some depth. This is kind of like a fake stereo effect that this creates. So I'll play these in solo so you can hear that.
Let it breathe. Have a seat. Sins to my sin. Him. Kid. Fibs. Let it breathe.
So very subtle, but it's just creating a little bit of width and depth within the BVs to make them stand out and sit in a different space slightly to the main vocal. Next, we've got the Adlibs, and I'll play those quickly on this verse to give you a feel of what's going on here.
Remember that. Just to watch my back. I know that.
So as you can see, I've kind of split these into left and right. So I've cut them all up and then, put one left, one right, one left, one right throughout the song. Again, just to put them in a slightly different space to any of the main vocals, and, it's kind of ear catching and just adds that extra little bit of atmosphere and feel to the song. They're processed in a very similar way. They've got more reverb. So I've sent, I've basically turned up the sends on these so that there's more delay, more reverb, and more kind of atmospheric stuff going on with them than the main vocal. And then I've also added this Waves Chromatate. This is one of my favorite plugins by Waves. As I said, again, links are in the description for these plugins, these Waves plugins that I'm using in the mix. Check this plugin out. It does a lot of different things, but for this, I've basically turned the speed down to 7.5, added a little bit of flux, And this just creates really subtle kind of distortion and also takes out some of the high end so that they sit a little bit further back.
Work, sir, work, sir, work, sir.
So as you can hear, it's adding a nice little bit of kind of tape distortion, which is what this plugin is made for, and I just like that on Adlibs a lot of the time. Sometimes I use the decapitator or other distortion plugins, but this is for a more subtle distortion sound. Slap this on, put the record level up, the flux level up, put it on 7.5, and it can create a really nice subtle distortion. Now, another really important part of these verses is the delay throws that I've used. As you can see here, there's a lot of breaks and gaps within the vocals, and I don't always want to fill these gaps, but on this song I decided to. So let me first play you this part of the verse without these delay throws in, and you'll see the kind of dilemma I was faced with.
Indeed, it's probably the lowest I ever felt. True, you see me smile, you can never tell. A+ at land, I never felt. I never felt.
So as you can hear, there's nothing in those gaps at all. There's no ad-libs to help you out. There's nothing at all. So you're faced with the question, do you fill those gaps or do you leave them empty? Now, obviously, sometimes it's better to just leave them as they are for dramatic effect, you know, but I will always try, you know, if I get a verse like this with a lot of breaks and a lot of gaps, I will always try at least 2 or 3 different types of delays, you know, different speeds and different sounds on the delays, and just see what works best or see if none work at all. And for this one, I settled on this. The artists like it, you know, when I do, you know, you never know, because I'm not in the studio with the artist. I don't know, did he want those gaps to just be completely blank? Was that part of the effect of what he was writing or not? So I may always just put a note in the email like, I filled those gaps, let me know if you don't like it. If it's whack, I'll take it out. But he liked it, so we stuck with it. So let me show you how it sounds with the delays in it.
Indeed, it's probably the lowest I ever felt. True, you see me smile, you can never tell. A+ at land, I never felt. I never fell in love.
Now, when I first put these in, I was like, I don't know, you know, do I like them, do I not? But now when I listen to this song, you know, a couple of years down the line, this is one of my favorite parts of the song, actually, these delays. I actually really like the way they sound. And sometimes it's a ping pong delay, and sometimes that can be a little bit cheesy and corny, but I actually like it on this song. So let me show you what I did. Obviously, first of all, I went through and cut here, here, and here, and copied them up to another channel, which is the way I like to do delay throws, so that I've got an independent channel and I can do exactly what I want on that channel to make that delay sound how I want it to sound. So the first part of the process in here is the same as the verse, so I haven't changed the sound of what's going into the delay at all. Then I've used Waves, H delay, as I said, links in the description for these Waves plugins. This is my favorite delay plugin. I've got it on a ping pong setting, on a quarter note. I've used the high pass and the low pass here, so I'm cutting out a lot of the super highs and the lows. So it's a very mid-rangey kind of delay here. Got the lo-fi button on as well. So that's the thing that's actually creating the delay itself. Let me take off everything else so you can hear just that on its own.
Can never tell.
After that, I'm using the decapitator to get some distortion on it. So that really just adds that grit and distortion to the delay, which makes it sound a little bit more aggressive. After that, we've got a reverb, which I think just helps to smooth it out a little bit.
Can never tell. I never felt.
Now, sometimes with these ping pong delays, I find that if it's like 100% left and 100% right, it's just too wide and it's too much coming out of, one speaker at once. So I like to bring it in and bring it more central and less wide so that it's maybe like sort of 30-30 panned rather than 100% left or 100% right, if you follow what I'm saying. So after all of that, I've actually used the PSP stereo controller to bring the width right down. And you'll hear what this is doing here.
Ever felt can never.
So if you're listening in headphones or between two speakers, which hopefully you are, then you'll hear that it really reins it in. Now, some people maybe prefer it to be a lot wider and a lot, to have that panning effect much stronger. But for me, I just wanted it less wide, and I've used this to kind of tame it. So that's a good trick. If you like ping pongs, but you don't want them super left and right, you can use something like that or another plugin to bring the width right down. So that's the first delay that I've used on this track. There's another one here.
Snap back and all of that.
The difference on this one is just that I haven't got the distortion on it. Apart from that, it's pretty much the same. I just didn't use the distortion on that. And it's also probably not standing out in the mix as much as those other ones that I just showed you for that reason. So we compare them.
Like jerk, take it how you want it, either way it might hurt. I can't lie, I think it's about time.
It's just a little bit cleaner. I could have used the same delay on that as I did with these, but for me, I just wanted that one to sound a little bit different, so I created two different delays there. And that's the verse vocals finished. Now the chorus vocal, the actual individual channels would have been treated very much the same as the verse vocal. There was no reason to do anything much different because it's the same artist with the same, the vocal take was very similar, if I remember rightly. So I treated the individual channels pretty much the same as I did on the verse, so I won't go into them. But as you can see, I've got 3 sort of main layers here. They all sound pretty much the same.
They say that opposites attract, I'm real. I ain't trying to find the opposite of that.
I've panned one to the left slightly, not too much, one to the right, and then I've left one dead center. Again, it will be pretty much the same processing over here, slightly different on the chorus bus, but pretty much the same. I've reduced a little bit more on the low end there. I think because there's no kick and bass in the chorus here, it just sounded better to have the vocals a little bit thinner here.
They say that opposites attract, I'm real. I ain't trying to find the opposite of that. Came in my life, you're my queen, it's a fact. Show my lyrics to my beat, indeed that's a rap.
Where I have made a few changes here is I've sent more of these to the reverbs and delays. So there's a contrast from the verse to the chorus where the chorus just gets a little bit more wet. It just has more reverb, more delay. And I've also sent it out to a ping pong delay here. Just to create a little bit more space and movement on the chorus, I've added in a basic ping pong delay. You can see the settings here with the H delay. Quite wet mix on the reverb on the end of it. It just creates that little bit more space and atmosphere and that difference between the verse and the chorus. Now the other part of the chorus is this kind of singing ad-lib here, which is kind of like a background melody part.
And the opposite of that. Came in my life, you're my queen, it's a fact. Show my lyrics to my beat, indeed that's a rap. They say that opposite.
Now first of all, this, you can obviously hear this has a massive auto-tune effect on it. But rather than auto-tune, I'm actually using Waves Tune real time by Waves. It's a great alternative to auto-tune and it costs a fraction of the price. Again, links in the description for this plugin. Definitely get this if you're looking for a good, affordable way of getting the auto-tune sound and functions. This does the job and I use it on everything. So I'm using that on the fastest speed and the fastest transition just to create that robotic sound. And then after that, it's being compressed and EQ'd very basically. Quite a sort of high pass filter there. So there's not much low end going on in this vocal. And then after that, I've used this real ADT plugin, again by Waves. Great plugin to create a fake double. So if you let me turn everything else off so you can hear just this. So as you can hear, it creates basically a double track of whatever you put on it. There's a load of really good presets on here, but I just went with the default here. And it just creates a kind of, it does create a double, but it also makes it sound kind of phasey and sort of out there, which I liked for this vocal. On this vocal, as you can see, I've just basically slammed it into a load of delays and reverbs. Same ones that I showed you before, but with a couple of extras. So there's an extra reverb going on here. It's just a reverb with a big decay, a lot of width, just to create that. You know, you could have done this in any way, really. I could have just slammed a reverb on the actual channel. There's so many ways of, you know, creating a big spaced out reverb sound. I didn't spend too much time perfecting it. I just turned all my sends up and it sounded great. But the other thing to mention here is that I've also sent it out to this sort of pitched reverb bus. So I've used the Little Altar Boy. So yeah, I'm basically pitching this up by 12 semitones, a full octave. And then after that, I've got some stereo width on it and then a reverb right up at 77%. This could be any reverb, but I've used the MPX native here. Really could be any reverb. I'll just play this on its own, see what you think. So it sounds a little bit mad on its own, but I think when you play it with the song, it really works in just creating that kind of weird, spacey, out there kind of vibe and just brings an extra texture to it.
My lyrics to my beat, indeed, it's probably the lowest I ever felt.
So that's this track fully mixed. I'm going to quickly show you now what I did on the mastering bus on this song. I did master this song, so the track that's out there is the one that came straight out of this computer. When I'm mixing a song from scratch like this, I don't do too much on my master bus because I like to do all the work in the mix rather than the mastering, but there is a certain amount of things on there that really can only be on there. So first of all, we've got this bus compressor by Slate, the VBC FG Grey, and we're using this just to try and add some glue to the mix and bring it all together.
If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fibs. Sign on full rap. That's why it's awkward on day night, late night. Aeroplane mode, girl, say flat. I don't really love you, I just love that you take time. When you stroll my soul, feel the shivers for 8 nights. Daylight to daylight, and when you walk.
It's just adding a little bit of glue to the song. After that, we've got this. I use this on every track now. It's my favorite mastering EQ. It's the Amec EQ 200. Really not doing much here, just a little boost here on the super low end. All of these are not even being used. But what I am using is the stereo width here. I like to create a little bit of width with a plugin like this. I'll quickly show you what that sounds like before and after.
Now I'm overwhelmed. The fire in my soul, now I'm over self. Put my cards on the table, now I'm overdealt. How real can I get, blood a rap? Remember when you my friend and said you had my back? I should have turned him back to front just to watch my back. Snap back and all of that, all of that, all of that.
After that, we've got the Fresh Air plugin by Slate. I like to use this just to bring out a little bit of sheen and high end on the final master, but this is really subtle. It's only on 2, so only those with really good ears will probably hear this.
Fired in my soul, now I'm over self. Put my cards on the table, now I'm overdealt. How real can I get, blood a rap? Remember when you my friend and said you had my back? I should have turned him back to front just to watch my back. Snap back and all of that, all of that, all of that.
So yeah, very subtle, but just adding that little bit of high-end sheen that I like. And that's really it. After that, we're just hitting the limiters. This is the Limitless plugin.
Source, the X word, specialize in you. I'm your expert. Like when I got you, just to make my kids surf. Get in your belly, think I'm chicken like jerk. Take it how you want it, either way it might hurt. I fell in lust with your body, not your man. I know you went uni, I know you done alright. Got a 2-1, you're working all the time.
As you can hear, that's the main limiter that's really bringing all the level into the song. And I do mix into that limiter because I like to know how my thing's going to sound at the end. So for me, there's no benefit in mixing without a limiter on the master bus like that, because, you know, ultimately things are going to change once you put the limiters on the master bus, or when it gets mastered by whoever it gets mastered by, whether it's me or somebody else. You know, the overall sound, that is going to change it. So I like to hear how my kick and my bass and everything is going to sound once it's actually being limited. And I also use that limiter as a sort of gauge, you know. If I'm not getting enough level and the limiter's having to work too hard over here and there's too much gain reduction going on, it means that the mix is not balanced well enough, you know. It means that the kick and the bass, for whatever reason, is just using up too much headroom, and I've got to address that. So you can really use limiters sometimes as actual meters in a way, you know. They tell you something about the song and the balance of the song that can help you in the mix process. After that, we've got the Ozone 9 maximizer, which is just taking off a little bit and also putting my ceiling down to minus 0.5.
If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fibs. Sign on full rap. That's why it's awkward on day night, late night. Aeroplane mode, girl, say flat. I don't really love you, I just love that you take time. When you stroll my soul, feel the shivers for 8 nights. Daylight to daylight, and when you watershed, we stay live. They say the opposite.
And as you can see, I'm using the Waves WLM meter here to gauge my loudness. Now, you can't always just rely on these plugins, but they do give you an idea of how loud the song is. Now, on this song, you'll see that we're sort of at minus 10-ish.
That's why it's awkward on day night, late night. Aeroplane mode, girl, say flat. I don't really love you, I just love that you take time. When you...
And that's generally where I like to be. I like to be between minus 9 and minus 10 LUFS. Long term, sort of minus 11, minus 12. That's where I've found creates a loud enough master without it being too loud and too crushed and too dynamically, you know, damaged. So that's where I like to be. I know there's a lot of debate around this with the minus 14 thing and everybody saying to master lower, but for me, that's what I've always done and that's what I'm sticking to for now. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that video, maybe learned something from it. Please feel free to drop any comments, questions or suggestions in the comment section, and I'll do my best to get back to every single one of you. Please do check out the song and the artist if you're feeling the track. All the links will be in the description below. If you like what you saw here, please do drop a like on the video, click the subscribe button, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.